Welcome to another session of AA Illustrates. My name is Micah Smith, and today we are going to be looking at an RSS feed reader. Today's session is going to be a build along. So if you have Automation Anywhere A2019 Enterprise, or if you're using Community Edition, you can build this bot alongside with me. So it's best to have like another screen set up so you can maybe watch me on one screen and you do it on the other. Or if you just want to watch me all the way through and then try it afterwards, that's cool too. So let's get into it. What is AA Illustrates? AA Illustrates is an episodic series, and it's kind of a long form, right? We're doing some quick tip videos and stuff like that, but this is kind of a longer form video where we're having full bot builds or deep dive discussions or kind of investigative looks on certain topics. This is community driven, so it's driven by the kind of content that you guys are asking for, that you're looking for. This video is actually a request. Someone sent me wanting to build something like this, so we said, sure. Let's build it. Anyway, if there's stuff that you're curious about, topics you want to learn more about, things you want to do in RPA but don't quite understand, send us those on our social channels. Connect with us on social. Leave a comment on the video on YouTube. Let us know how we can make these videos to best serve you. So definitely get involved in those different channels. Who am I? My name is Micah Smith. I'm a Developer Evangelist here at Automation Anywhere. I'm a former COE lead at a Fortune 100 financial services company, and I am an RPA and document imaging enthusiast. So I'm creating a lot of these RPA bot build videos, also writing content and tutorials for our dev portal as well. So today our concepts covered is just a build along bot. So we're going to do an RSS feed reader bot. And if you don't know what that means, that's cool. Hang with us and we'll get through this and we'll build a bot together. Okay? So first off, what is an RSS feed? RSS stands for Really Simple Syndication, and it's a web feed in the form of an XML that allows applications and users to read data in a standardized format. So if I'm writing a blog or I have some kind of periodical where I'm publishing content on a regular basis, I might publish an RSS feed, and that RSS feed would allow people to subscribe to my content and either read the full content or at least read a subset of my content from their other readers, right? And that's how news can be syndicated to places like Google News and Apple News and those different platforms that kind of show you a snippet of an article, but then eventually you lead to someplace else. That's all done through RSS feeds. So for our purposes and for bot building, this is a really cool way for us to get some hands-on experience with the XML package. And we're going to be using that a lot today so that we can read through an XML, we can count objects, and we can extract data from an XML as well. So our process today, we are going to be building an RSS feed reader that will allow us to read from an XML RSS feed, and then we'll use the data from that to actually build a website, right? So kind of like a sample blog or something like that. We're going to connect to the RSS feed and obviously read all of that data. We're going to count the number of objects that show up there. We will then, from each object, grab the title, description, category, publication date, image, and URL. So what is that? 6 total items. And then we're going to use the data that we read from that to build an HTML page with the results, right? So we're going to have this HTML template I'm going to share with you here in a minute. And we'll use that template to build an HTML page with the results of our RSS read. All right, so that gets us to our build. Again, if you have Community Edition, that will work totally fine for this. If you have Enterprise, that too will work. So feel free to use either one. I'm just in my environment, I have a subfolder called RSS Feed Reader, so I'll create a bot here. I'll talk to you a little bit about the process we're going to use here. So this is the RSS feed from wired.com. Okay, it's just wired.com/feed/RSS. I'm going to have all these links in the video description as well, so that you can have the same tabs open that I have. If you look at it, notice it's got, and we can actually kind of minimize this to break it up here in Chrome. I've got the RSS intro, right, which is kind of like my header statement here. Below that, I've got channel, right? And channel is a single object with a bunch of objects inside of it. Inside of channel, I have like a title and description, which is just telling me about Wired itself. But then if you look inside of that, I've got a bunch of different items, and I'll minimize some of those just so we can see, right? So I've got a bunch of different items which are inside of my channel. And the item is a repeating element. And here I can see for each item, I have a title, I have a link, I have a publication date, I have a description, I've got a category, some basic keywords. I also have a URL to an image, right? So each of my stories has an image that goes with it, kind of like a teaser image. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to read some of these items, we're going to read the items, but we're going to read attributes from each item to build our different cards. Okay, so what we're going to be building is going to look like this, right? And this is a sample template that I've created, and the code here I'll show you in just a second. But this is a sample template that's going to allow us to basically have a header, which has, kind of what would look like a menu, and this is called a hero up here. And then below that, we'll have these cards. And if you notice, the card object right here has some of the, kind of standard variable naming that we use in Automation Anywhere, with the prefix of a $sign, then a prefix character for representing its type, and then the variable title, and then the $sign at the end. So we're going to use basically a pre-made template here that's, ready with variables to create these different cards. And we'll create these different cards, one per item that we saw in this RSS feed, so that when we actually run this and create this page, we should see it totally filled with cards and images for every single article that shows up on that feed. Now, to get this code, I've actually put it up on the Automation Anywhere GitHub. So if you go to github.com/automationanywhere, again, I'll be sure to share this on the video description as well. But let's go look at AA Illustrates RSS Feed Reader. By the way, the full code to this is here too. So if you get stuck and you want to just download it and see what I did, you can do that. But if you're going to follow along, let's take a look at the RSS Feed Reader template. And what we can see here is this is that full HTML. Now what I'm going to do is view this in raw. And if you're not familiar with HTML, that's totally fine. I don't expect you to be an HTML expert coming into this. But I added some tags here, right? So here we have start of card and we have end of header stuff, right? I put those tags in there so that as we start to break this up and create it with the bot, we know exactly how to do that. Okay, so you'll want to have this page open because we're going to refer back to that a couple times. All right, let's get to the bot. Enough with that intro. Hopefully that gave you some insight into what we're creating here. So let's say AA Illustrates RSS Feed Reader. Now, like I said before, when I'm creating bots, the thing that I always do is start with steps. And we kind of already talked about steps in our PowerPoint there. So let's go down here to step. We talked about the steps that we needed to do. We just didn't really formalize them as steps. But let's talk about what we're going to do, and then we'll go back in and fill in the code into those steps. So for the first step, we need to create our HTML file. And we're going to do that because we need to have something to write our cards to. So we're going to establish that HTML file first, then we'll go back through and write card details to it. The next thing we're going to do is read RSS feed. We're going to have to read that RSS feed from the wired.com website here so that we can actually make use of some of that data. After we've read it, what we're going to do is count number of items. So we need to figure out how many items are in there, right? We saw that there is an RSS and then channel, but then inside of that there's this repeating element, which is item, and we saw that there's quite a few of them. I could count them, I guess, but I'd rather just have the code do that for us, right? Because some days, even if I count it, right, let's say there's 100 here, if I count it and today there's 100 but tomorrow there's 98, I don't want my bot to break because it's expecting 100 items every time. So we're going to count the number of items. Now, once we count them, then we need to iterate through them. So I'm going to say iterate through items to create cards. Okay, we're going to iterate through each item so that we can read the details that we need and then write those cards to our HTML file. The last thing we need to do is, so we'll call this HTML footer. We'll put add, since we're kind of starting with verbs on the rest of these. We'll add our HTML footer, and that will allow us to add the stuff that shows up at the bottom of the page, which is kind of just this demo page for AA Illustrates, back to top, like just a standard footer there. All right, let's get started with some of our code. So the first thing we need to do is create an HTML file. I'm going to, let's go to my ctemp directory here. I'm just going to do it here. I've created a folder called RSS Feed Reader. I'm going to delete the files out of here real quick. So I've got ctemp RSS Feed Reader. I wanted to use a location that you could replicate as well, and that way the code will work no matter what we're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an HTML file here, even though I'm going to have the bot created ultimately anyway. So I'll just call this RSS Feed Reader, and I'll put .html, and I'm just going to delete the .txt at the end. And yes, we'll change it. Okay, so I basically just got an empty file there, a blank file. Now to create my HTML file, I'm going to go up here to my logging package, where I'm going to say log to file. I'll drag that over. And for my file path, I'm going to browse out and grab that file we were just looking at. So that was in ctemp, and then RSS Feed Reader right here. Okay. For my text to log, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here to my GitHub, and everything that says end of header row stuff right here. So from here and above, I'm going to copy all of that, and I'm going to paste that into my enter text to log. And that's going to basically start our HTML file, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to continue to write to that same file as we go through the bot, and then at the very end, that footer will actually kind of close off all of our, our HTML body tag, our head tag wouldn't close, but our HTML tag, stuff like that would close there. So here, one other thing we want to look at is when logging, do we want to overwrite the existing log file or append? For this one, we want to overwrite, because this is the beginning of our bot. We want to make sure it's always creating a new HTML file. So I'm going to hit save there, because if I have an old one, or maybe I ran it yesterday and I want to run it again today, I want to make sure that I'm overwriting that. Next, we have to read from our RSS feed. Now, we have some XML actions from our XML package here, but those don't actually involve me getting the RSS feed. They're really just for me parsing it once I've got it. So what we need to do is we're going to go up to the REST Web Services, and we're going to use a get method. Okay, so for our URI, we're just going to actually give the full URL right here. And what that should return to me is a dictionary. And the dictionary will include in the body the full XML, which we saw on this tab here, which is my RSS feed. So let's go here. We'll call it d-rest response. Again, I'm naming this with a lowercase d because it's a dictionary. And that way, like mentally, as I see this kind of value pop up, I can know what it is. Cool. The next thing we're going to do is let's do a test real quick just to make sure everything we have so far is working. So I'm going to come right here, and for my text to display, what I'm going to do is hit F2, which is to insert a variable, and I'm going to choose the d-rest response, which is dictionary of strings, and here I'm going to put body. Now, how do I know to put body? Well, when I get a response from a REST web service, notice here it says use response header name key to fetch header value and body to fetch the body. The body of the response is going to be this, right? So that's exactly what I need to return. So what I'll do here is I'll hit save. Let's run this. Really not much is going to happen besides the creation of that HTML file, which we already had, but it's basically going to fill in with some, getting started kind of stuff. And then we should be making a call to the REST web service which is the RSS feed for wired.com. And then we can see that, yeah, it returned everything to us, right? So at this point, we have the entire RSS feed for wired.com. I'll close that, and then I'm going to delete this because we really don't need it. We saw that we got the body back, and we see the full RSS feed. All right. The next thing we want to do is we want to count the number of items that we have. So this is where we're going to come down here and use our XML packages. So I want to say execute XPath function. And what that allows me to do is actually use XPath functions to figure out how many objects I have at a certain level. So what we'll do is we'll put count and then open paren. And then what I'm going to do is, let's put the format here. So it's going to be /RSS /channel/item. So let's do /RSS/channel/item. And it's going to ask me where I want to store that output. And I'm going to store that to item count. And again, because I like to test as I'm going through this, I'm going to add another message box here so I can see what my count was. And I'll put this to close after 5 seconds. Oh, you know what? Actually, we missed a step here. Before we actually do our count, we need to establish a session. So let's go here to say start session. And here I'm going to say the text, right? So when I start a session, it's basically saying, hey, what RSS or what XML file are we talking about here? I'm going to give it the text, and I'll insert a variable here, which is going to be my REST response body, right? So notice there it says the session name is default. This execute XPath function also has a session of default. So that means we're talking about the same session. If I wanted to change that, or if I had multiple sessions going, I would just need to give them a unique name. All right, let's run that, and that should hopefully return to us the number of items that show up in that RSS feed. And notice also that we don't have to actually get a browser window open or anything like that, right? This is all really happening with the bot itself. There's no open in browser, go to the page, or anything like that. We're doing this directly through this Get Web Services, the RESTful Web Services Get package that allows us to read that data directly. All right, so at this point, I know that I have 50 items, right? And if for some reason Wired only published 40 items a week from now, this would still work fine. The next thing we're going to do is establish our loop. So let's go to loop, because now we know that we have the full XML file, or that RSS feed, right? We know how many items are in it. Now we need to start reading specific items from that to grab the article title and the URL and the other stuff, right? So for our loop number of times, we want this to be 50, right? But I don't want to just type in 50. So I'm going to show you a shortcut here. What I can do is type in $, and then notice that it kind of pre-populates with my different variables that I have available. I want to use item count, so I'm going to type in item count. Now, that's going to give me a problem here because that's a string. So what I can do is I can type dot, let's see, it was dot string colon to number. And I'll just type it out because I'm almost there. And what that's going to do is on the fly, it will convert my string to a number so that that will work in this format, right? And I know it's coming back as a 50, so that should be fine. For my iteration, right, so assign the current value to a variable. This is going to be my iterator. And what I'm going to say here is, let's see, in counter. So for every time that my loop runs, that number is going to increment by 1. So the first time my loop runs, that in counter value will be set to 1. The next time my loop runs, that in counter will be set to 2. I need that incrementing value because the first time my loop runs, I want to be reading from this first item. The next time my loop runs, I want to be reading from this second item. So I'm going to have to use that as a part of my extraction technique for reading stuff from this XML. So we have encounter there. Cool. All right, now we should be good to start reading data or extracting single nodes from our XML file. So I'm going to drag this over that says get single node. And if we go back to this sample file, and again, this HTML page that I'm viewing right here is the same thing as this, what we saw on GitHub. This is just me saving it locally and then opening it up as an HTML, right? So that we can actually see what it looks like. So the first thing we want to grab is, let's grab this item title. And if we go back to a couple things, one, we want to make sure we name our variable exactly like this, so it'll work with our template. Two, we want to go back to our XML feed so that we can kind of match up what that value is, right? So our title is actually called title here, so that should be easy. But we want to make sure we know exactly what the tag is that we're using to read these values. So our XPath expression is going to look a lot like what we used already to get the count for the number of items. So it should be RSS. And then again, I'm just following exactly what it says here. It will be channel. So we'll type that in. Then it's going to be item. So we'll put that in. Now, item is where we actually want to be able to iterate. So inside of square brackets after item, I want to put in the item number that I'm trying to read, right? And that corresponds with the counter value that we just set up. So what I'm going to type here is n-counter. Now, notice if I just type another $sign and then try to move off this, it's going to give me an error. And it's saying, hey, this has to be a string. You can't use a number here. So I'm going to have to do the same trick that we just did, except backwards. So I'll type dot number colon to string. And then I'll have another square bracket. And again, I'm just using the square brackets because that's with XPath expression, that's how I would reference a specific item of many. And then the last thing I'm going to put, I'll put a slash here at the end, is the actual value I'm trying to read. So title, right? Because that's what I'm going to read right here. So let's put title here. And then I can assign that to an output variable. And again, this is where we said we wanted to make sure we match up with what the template has. So it calls it s_item_title. I'll create a new variable here, and then we're good. Now, what we did here, I'm going to copy all of this actually. We want to replicate several times, right? So I'm going to add another get single node. I'm going to put this again, but this time we need to read, let's see, item category. So we'll look through here and I see two categories showing up. I'm just going to put the first one. And they're both called category. So put right here. And then for my output, I'm going to have to create a variable again. And this would be s_item category. So I'll put that there. Okay. So hopefully this pattern is starting to make sense for you. What we need to do is just repeat this over and over until we get all the values we need. And if we go back to our PowerPoint, we want to do this for title, description, category, publication date, image, and URL. So in another shortcut here is if I highlight over a particular package, I can copy it and then paste it, or a particular action I should say. And then I can just keep updating it. So here I've got category already. The next thing we need to read is item description. Here we can see the description is kind of, oh, right here, description. So that should be easy. We'll put that here. I'm just going to change this to description and change my variable. It was s_item description, I believe. And we'll hit create and select. All right, and then s_item publication date. Let's do that one. So I'm going to copy this and paste it. New variable here for s_item publication date. And then for my XPath expression, I'm going to put the date, pub date right here. Now this one's going to get a little bit trickier. The date is being returned to us with this format, which I don't think looks awesome for what we're trying to do, right? So what we're going to do is actually use some of the, let's see, date time. We'll use some date time commands here to change this format around a little bit so it'll look nicer on our card. So let's add an assign action. And that assign action will ask for a date time that we're entering. So I'm going to put F2 here, and I will use the S item publication date, and hit yes, insert. And then it's going to say what date time variable do you want to store that as. I'm going to put DT for date time, and then item publication date. So I don't really care about the format that it's storing it in. I just want to make sure that it's being saved as a date time variable, because once it's a date time variable, then I can change it back to a string. So what I'm grabbing here is the toString action. I can change it back to a string using the format that I want. So here for my source, I'm going to choose the date time or DT item publication date. And then for my custom format, I can specify how I want it to come out. So what I'm going to do is MMM. And again, I'm using capital M here because lowercase m would technically be minutes. Dash DD dash, let's see, YYYY. We'll do it like that. And then for my output format, I'm going to save that back as S item publication date. And we'll hit save. Great. So we got that one. We want to get the URL to the item. And if you look here, as I highlight over that, it's showing S item link. You probably can't see that very well, but S item link is going to be our variable. So let's do one more of these. XML, I'm going to paste that down here. Create a variable called S item link. Again, if your variables were named differently than what I'm doing, that works. You'll just need to make sure that you actually update the code here when you reference it, right? Because here we have those values kind of predetermined. So we got to make sure that we match those variables. If you're going to change them, just be consistently different. All right, so this is the item link. Let's go back to look at our feed. The link is right here. It's just called link. So that's fine. We'll put link. And the final thing we need to do is grab the image. Now the image is a little bit different. Notice here that it's in media:thumbnail, and then it has a URL tag right here. So what I'm going to do is copy out that media thumbnail. I'll copy this to have one more get single node action. Instead of link, I'm going to put media:thumbnail here. And then here for my attribute, I'm going to put in URL, because that's the attribute for the URL to the image that I actually want. So I'll put URL. And then if we go look at our code real quick, let's see what the image actually is. It's called S item image. So I'm going to copy that out. Save that here. Now, we did a lot of kind of copying and pasting from one get single node variable to another. It would be good to kind of double check these just to make sure they're all writing to a different variable. Because if you forget to change the variable when you're doing the copy and paste, it could screw up. So I'm just going to double check these real quick. Yep, everything looks okay. And by screw up, I just mean it's going to overwrite the data, or you'll get the wrong data and the wrong value. So, you know, it's not the end of the world. All right, the last thing, so all of this is happening in our loop, right? This is happening for every single one of those items. We're going to be reading all of that data. But right now we're not doing anything with it. So the last thing we need to add inside of our loop is a log to file action. Log to file. And this is where we're going to reference our code again. So let's go back here to our GitHub. Notice here it says start of card and end of card. I'm going to copy just that block. Notice it has all of my values there for the stuff that we just extracted. I'll put that for my text to log. For my log to file, I'll hit browse and just go out and grab that HTML file we were just playing with on ctemp. RSS, this one right here. That's my file path. Cool. Now, here we want to make sure we're appending, right? Because our first log to file action was basically establishing that HTML file. Our subsequent actions should be appending to that file, because we're going to keep adding to it, right? It's not complete yet. It wouldn't display properly. I'll hit save. The last thing we need to do is another log to file. And again, we'll use that same file path, so I'll copy this out. And this time, our text to log is going to be from that GitHub page, the start of footer stuff all the way to the end of footer stuff. Hopefully you appreciate the way that I'm naming these things for my tags. All right, let's hit save. And then the moment of truth. To make sure we're not tricking ourselves, let's delete this just to make sure. And then I'll go ahead and run this. We'll bring that window back up. I think we might have forgot to get rid of the counter message box, so that might come up here in a second. Oh, we got rid of it. All right, so it wrote out our RSS feed reader HTML. Let's open this up and see what it looks like. Cool. So for every single one of these items that was in this RSS feed, we ended up with an image, a category, a title, a brief description. We've got a link. So if we want to read more about a particular story, we could do that. And then we also have our date. And again, we put dashes here. I guess that doesn't look great. We should have done like MMM, comma, or actually nothing, right? Because August 14th, then comma 2020. Anyway, you can play around with that. The other thing, looking at this, I noticed that there's some unprintable characters showing up. You know, we could handle that directly in our bot by doing some character replacement. I think there's, if we go look at this, let's see what this is. We'll find this article. So whatever this character is not displaying well. So we could go and replace that, and that way we wouldn't get those unprintable characters showing up in our HTML. So hopefully you're able to hang with me through that bot build and able to get that working. If you were having issues with it, again, the full code is up on GitHub and that same location. So if you want to just download it and import mine and run it and see how it works, you can do that. Brief recap. So the XML package lets us manipulate and read from XML documents. We saw how to do that today. We saw how to do an XPath function. We also saw how to read single node values and iterate through those. I would suggest to think creatively about different use cases for extracting data and using it to create new stuff, right? We, besides working with XML, we created an HTML page. So how could you use some of the data that your bot is grabbing or generating to create dashboards, maybe create a multi-source feed generator if you're going to read a bunch of XML reads from, or RSS feeds from different news sources. You could create your own web page that displays all those together. You could also create a blog that automatically updates itself and automatically creates itself as a bot in the back end, right? So those are some like creative things that you could try to do with this kind of approach. And then I would also say consider using XML formats for storing and retrieving different data. So whether that's storing your configs for your bot, if you want to have your bot read from an XML configuration file to kind of set up some values or set up local variables as you move from system to system, you could do that. Or even passing data between bots. So if I have a parent bot and a subtask or a child bot that I'm calling, I could technically use XML and create an XML file, pass that to the child bot. The child bot could read it as config or update values or do something like that to make use of that data. And it's a way for me to pass a lot of data all at once. Great. So thanks again for joining AA Illustrates. Again, make sure to provide your feedback. Your feedback makes these sessions better, and we want to hear your ideas. We want to hear about what you want to learn. Make sure to like and comment and subscribe to the content so you can know when we're creating new videos like this. And be sure to follow us on all of our social channels and YouTube. Thanks again. Go be great.